Hey there. So, my next guest has married VR and neuroscience and has put together this amazing business that is helping unlock the powers of our brains to be able to come up with new drugs, be able to help solve neurological issues. I was so excited to be able to get him on the show and learn what he's doing. And I know you all are absolutely going to love it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Amir Bozorgzadeh. How's it going, Amir?
Wonderful pronunciation. We practiced before and you did it perfectly. I'm
Thank
really,
you.
really happy to be on board. Thanks so much for the invite.
Absolutely. All right. So, Amir, I like to get the show get straight into it. So why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. I am a Vancouverite who's been an expat for about 12 years, living in markets like Dubai, and then since 2015, based out of Europe. And since that time, previously a market researcher, then a games publisher. But since the time I moved to Europe, I became a contributing writer for VentureBeat and TechCrunch on the topics of virtual reality and how virtual reality intersects with emerging technologies like AI, of course, but more importantly, how it really intersects into like critical use cases in the healthcare and education industry, which is why I started the company that I'm running now, Virtuleap, which is a next generation cognitive assessment and diagnostic tool that uses VR and games to better understand the human condition.
I absolutely love it. And I know we're gonna have a lot to talk about because I was an elder law attorney, and every nursing home I went into, there was a Wii because it was good for them. And I love this topic. I can't wait to get into it. However, before we do that, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm gonna ask you like I just ask everybody else. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Amir?
I just recognize, weird is weird. I feel like you're a bird of the same feather as me, so I feel like not making it a 10. I would say I'm a 8.3.
And why would you say that?
I think I have a Peter Pan syndrome that just won't go away. And in the world of, I'm 36 years old now, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better, which means I have a lot of awkward moments. I say things that come out of my, head through my mouth in a way that is not digested sometimes. And these are things that I think popular culture, usually as you age, you're supposed to, calcify and slowly into a stone. And that's not seeming to happen to me. So I think I appear as neurotic in many occasions.
I actually love that answer. I'm a lot the same. You and I are probably kindred spirits. It was fantastic when I had my daughter because I get to play with toys again. All right. So Amir, before we kind of get into Virtuleap and what you're doing today, this is the Gamerpreneur podcast. So I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
Wow, you got the best questions. I never get these questions. I was a very avid player ever since I believe 8 years old, or 9 maybe. One of those kids who would wake up as early as possible in the mornings on Sundays and Saturdays, like 5 a.m. To play my Nintendo. I wasn't in the generation of Ataris and so on, even though could have been. But Nintendo, the first 18-bit was my first hardcore device.
I love it. And I'm assuming you continued playing along the years.
I played a lot. I was even in certain clans and groups before the time that esports got up and kicking. I had a friend who would travel to Korea to play in competitions there. But in North America, our clans were just mostly things for community. We would play against each other, but we did not have sponsorships or anything like this. But we had websites. We had our chat bots. To protect our channels on StarCraft, communities and stuff like this. We went pretty hardcore. And so I think around when I was 20 years old or around then, I had to give up playing so hardcore because I was doing quite poorly in university.
Okay. And what do you play today?
I play, I'm really boring nowadays. Again, I told you I had to stop playing. Counter-Strike was the game I had to stop playing during that time. just because I was addicted. And typically when I get a game, it really damages my relationship with my wife. Because
Right there with you.
I'm that addicted. So what I do play right now, if I talk to my co-founder and CTO, he's an avid gamer, hardcore. He'll laugh because I delete games as significantly as I download them because I get addicted that fast. The only game that I can stick to right now is auto chess.
Okay, beautiful. Now, you're actually just 2 years older than I am, so you've kind of had the same like exposure to the gamut of games out there. If you had to choose one as your all-time favorite, which one would you say it is?
This is a weird one to say, but I have so much nostalgia. If you remember Total Annihilation.
Yes. I only played
Yeah,
it a couple times, honestly.
it was a type of game like StarCraft, but you start with this master robot, and then he or she starts using the resources around it, creates the army, the base, everything, the resources. But if the enemy or you destroy each other's commander piece, the whole thing is destroyed. It's really like this next level strategic game that I never really had any other compete with in terms of my adoration.
I love it. I did try it a couple times, like I said, but I was definitely hardcore StarCraft and then Warcraft. So those are the ones I focused on. But I love it. All right, let's get over to the Preneur because I know you're itching to talk about Virtuleap. However, before we do that, you kind of told us a little bit already, but I would love to know, what is your professional background? How did you get to this place?
So I think some of it is my neuroticism. I've always been someone who reads really, really, bizarre topics, or at a really young age, really reading psychological works of Carl Jung, about the unconscious and subconscious, and things about reality that can't just be explained by what's obvious and apparent. It really needs digging, and when I got into the industry of market research, one thing I realized in that industry was you can do things like surveys, and you can ask people questions and about attitudinal, what do they think and feel about things. And then when you go and you actually watch their behavior, you see a contradiction between what they think and what they actually do. And so, that's always been a consistent, bizarre thing of reality that I've noticed. And as someone who began, for 5 years writing about virtual reality, the reason I'm so interested in it is because it's the first digital format that actually triggers our autonomic nervous system into believing that the experience is real. It's like if you're standing on top of a cliff in a virtual reality experience and you have a phobia of heights like I do, then your knees will shake. You will quiver, because just like doing a lie detector test, there's something weird going on in ourselves. There's a part of us that doesn't listen to the words, and it just reacts to a different kind of set of parameters. It's kind of like our evolutionary side of ourselves, and VR triggers that, and it fascinates the hell out of me. But particularly when it comes to healthcare and things like therapeutics and desensitization therapy to phobias, or behavioral therapy to make you better and more adaptable into the world, or in the sense of our company, how can you better understand yourself from a cognitive domain side of things, and how can you perhaps use that understanding to better yourself?
That's so cool. That's incredibly fascinating. What made you decide to start Virtuleap then? Like you were obviously into psychology, and then you just decided to start this business?
I ran a couple hackathons, these online VR hackathons in partnership with Oculus, which is part of Facebook, and Google and Samsung, a lot of the major players. And we ran these major global events to kind of see where are the low-hanging fruits in VR. If we give all these really cool prizes and have developers around the world create amazing use cases across all of the categories that are possible, where are the low-hanging fruits? Where's the stuff that really excites people with the possibilities and potential of virtual reality? And it became very apparent to me that there was only two critical use cases for virtual reality. It was educational or healthcare applications. And maybe that was because I'm in the Kool-Aid, and I want to see that. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But, a lot of life does seem like you're kind of unconsciously pulling yourself in a direction and just waiting for the right reasons to rationalize it in retrospect. And I feel kind of like a liar if I tell you it was all intentional. I think you embark boldly in a direction, and then reality feeds you with possibilities. And my life feels constantly like a rat in a maze that's being flooded with water, and you're trying to open up whatever doors are available, and most of them are locked. And when the one that opens up, you go through it, and then you end up where you are. And I would suppose I'm very happy to be in this situation as I am right now, because it's absolutely fascinating work. But it's a lot of gratefulness is part of my way of looking at it.
Okay. So what are the actuals that are coming out of Virtuleap?
So we're basically creating a library of these cognitive games. And the word game is not a really best way to describe it. It's really like we're gamifying these neuropsychological assessment tools that have been used for decades and decades by neurologists to better be able to qualify a person's cognitive load, for example, in terms of their memory skills, short-term memory skills, long-term memory skills. How do we create these, very closed loop gamified experiences, game mechanics to understand how you perform based on an aggregate, on a specific objective way of determining how you score. Like for a memory game, I can only get to level 5 based on these parameters, and maybe someone else can get level 6 and so on. And then I come back and try it again, and maybe I can really get close to level 6, but mostly I'm plateaued there. And then I try to do that for all the different cognitive domains. So we make a library of these cognitive games for like problem solving, information processing, task switching, but also motor control, spatial orientation, spatial audio awareness. And so you get a real sense of how you score across all these domains. The coolest thing about virtual reality and how it stands apart from any other digital solution is that we collect and capture about what we call volumetric data sets. So every 3 minutes of any of our games captures about 200,000 data points about the human condition, because we know if you're standing, sitting, how you're positioned. We know the eye tracking. We know whether you hit the ball with your forehand or backhand. It's a profound amount of data which can be utilized in a lot of ways for your benefit, as well as for the benefit of the research community and scientific community.
Very cool. Now, kind of like on the business side, are you just collecting the data yourself and then selling the data? Or are you setting up tools for other researchers? How does that work?
Yeah. So we would never, we are abiding to, for example, HIPAA compliance, GDPR. We don't do anything with the data that is outside of the purposes of research, like research towards Alzheimer's, research towards ADHD. These are the kind of areas that we're as a company focused on. So for example, our business model is primarily focused on working with the pharma companies because the pharma companies have a huge problem when it comes to neuroscience-based drugs. So for example, Alzheimer's drugs, there hasn't been a new one that's come into the market for 20 years. There's a 99% failure rate of all Alzheimer's clinical studies for the last 15 years. It's so crazy hard because of the blood-brain barrier and being able to actually affect someone, cognitively speaking, with a drug is much more challenging and much more expensive. So, we're working with pharma companies on their neuroscience-based drugs when they're in phase 3 clinical studies. And what we do is we serve as a companion diagnostic that profiles the patients that have the best possible treatment outcomes with all that data that I just mentioned, so that they can understand who are the people who this drug can actually benefit, and then not only get them out of the approvals process, but then be a predictor of success afterwards.
Fascinating. All right. And, Amir, more about you. Like, what is your role with Virtuleap?
So I basically pay the salaries. Yeah, that's it. No,
You're
but
the owner.
yeah, like I'm the only non-technical member of the team, and I'm the one who has to arrange the investment, of course, but on the other hand, the partnerships. We have 12 university research hospital sort of institutes as partners across the US and Europe, and we have 6 clinical studies planned to begin next year. I'm, for the most part, organizing these kind of partnerships, developing that roadmap from a business side, from a high level side. Whereas my CTO and co-founder, Hussein, he is arranging the product roadmap, the kind of topics that you might want to get really into detail with in terms of the games and how we document everything and how we do prototyping and how we ultimately decide which games make it to the library or don't, or how do we create the game scoring system, which is such an important part of the whole thing, that essentially weights all the games according to a singular system called the Enhanced Performance Index and scores each one and then gives you a universal score. All that stuff, is what Hussein would give you. But I am the marketer, business developer.
Okay, now I actually am happy I'm talking to you because my show is called The Gamerpreneur. I like to focus on the entrepreneur, not necessarily the product that they're putting out. And
Right.
so part of the purpose of my show is to showcase individuals who are doing something incredible. That way my audience might be able to follow in their footsteps. Maybe someone hears you and they're like, wow, that's fascinating. Well, if I add this other idea to this, I might be able to do my own thing.
Right.
So, I want advice from you on how to become an entrepreneur. How did you even start this business?
Rule number one, you have to be unhireable.
That's yeah.
Here, you asked how weird am I? It's like someone who goes in a room and he doesn't want people to have just like grumpy looks in their faces. He's compelled to want to make people happier, or change the mood in the room, or otherwise you just settle for it. Like, who becomes a middle manager ultimately, and who can't be a middle manager? And if you're not middle manager long enough, then you're unhireable because they look at your CV and they go, well, what the hell? I haven't been able to fit in. It's part of the answer to that question. When you try to work for companies and it's just not properly a fit because corporate structures of various kinds just are, antithetical to your DNA, and the way you behave and want to change and, your ideals, then sooner or later you come down to discovering the opportunities in entrepreneurship in terms of what is the opportunity, in terms of finding investment, formulating ideas to, cater to those investment opportunities. What are the mistakes you can make? And you have to make every single one of those mistakes yourself. As much as people say you can like learn from others, that's bullshit as far as I know. You have to, unless you're like a very privileged person, or you found yourself in a very privileged partnership with privileged people or something, and that happens all the time, and people look at those and go, oh, that's the rule. Actually, no, it's for most of us entrepreneurs, we have to make every single mistake ourselves. And so I think it's a windy process of discovering who you are and what the world actually wants for you. And it's kind of like those sediments things where you put all those different types of rocks and they all kind of find their place in the right spots. It's exactly like that. I don't think you have a choice in the matter. And when you try to force yourself into an entrepreneurship role, I think you can be rudely awakened to it's not that fun. It's actually a very brutal experience. I would say my experience has been very brutal. But humor and alcohol go a long way.
I got the humor on that one. Okay, I love your answer. Although you basically said you have to just try until you failed enough time that you become a success. And you also said that it's difficult to learn from another person. Having said that, though, I really would like to know, do you have any specific advice? Like maybe someone wants to talk to an investor, or maybe they whatever their position is. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs?
You have to be relentless in a polite way, of course. There's a lot of disappointments you're going to have over and over and over and over and over again. And you can't be emotionally fragile to let it break you. You have to have resilience. And I guess there's another term called anti-fragile, whatever that means, but it sounds nice. But you can't be broken by the process. You can't fall into fairy tales about what, straight lines don't occur in nature. And certainly in entrepreneurship, it's not going to happen the way you just think is perfect. So, but you're going to still do it. I do it all the time. And I get my heart broken over and over again. I just got, broken yesterday. So, but you got to have resilience, first of all. And then on top of that resilience, you have to do like 5 things at the same time for the same aim. You have to try to hit like 18 birds with one stone as many times as possible. You have to triangulate relationships that you want to conquer. You have to be like Machiavellian, not in the negative way, but in the way of like really like looking at it as a puzzle. And in fact, it's a video game in and of itself. And you're trying to go from level 1 to level 2, level 3, and get to that next boss and that next boss and the next boss. And again, if you're not emotionally able to adapt to that kind of condition and situation and circumstances, then there is the chance of you burning out. And that's the real threat of entrepreneurship. And I know my first answer was a little bit gloomy and the second one wasn't that much better, but there's a lot of exhilaration. It was honest. Yeah. But it's also the end of my day. So maybe if we had this conversation in the morning with my first coffee, which the reason I wake up in the morning sometimes is coffee, then I could have given you like the good sides of those things. But ultimately, I have no choice but to be an entrepreneur, but I'm also very grateful to it. But I have to also accept that it's an emotional, turbulent ride.
Absolutely. I love it. A little more personally about your journey. What was the one thing you wish you had known when you were starting out?
Oh, there's opportunities that you miss when you're starting out because you just don't know the best practices yet. like, really, like really know when you're doing a pitch, how investors think, how investors want it. Go on the YouTube right now and watch. There's like millions, well, maybe not millions, but at least hundreds of thousands of pitches from startup founders, and they do them based on these programs that they went through called accelerators, and they do them based on the proper format. And I didn't analyze things in the beginning that I could have analyzed because it's all there. Get your damn notebook, bringing out, watch the damn videos of other entrepreneurs that have been doing it for like years. Everybody from Airbnb, all of them, they were all losers at one point. Then they became not losers at another point. Part of it, it's fate, whatever, but they went through the process. You can see the early decks that they gave, decks to investors. You can see the early pitches they did. They were crap. So, but then you can see the best ones that they turned out to. So study them, write notes. I didn't do any of that. And I look back at the process of me iterating from horrible to less horrible and now mediocre. And I could have accelerated that if I just studied that one point of seeing what are the formats, what are the styles, you can start to see them very, very plain as day. And it would save you a lot of heartache and time because, you get a lot of doors closed prematurely because you just didn't know how to do things in the language of venture capital.
Oh, that's some of the best advice I've honestly ever heard from somebody on this show. And it's so true because it's honestly what I tell my own clients to do. Just go watch what other people have done. You don't have to listen to me. Go watch the other people and what worked. Now, Amir, earlier you were mentioning failure and that we have to fail and fail and fail until we succeed. And I love the fact that you brought that up because I personally believe that failure is our biggest teacher. And it's not our successes, it's the failures. Because if you succeed your first time, you don't necessarily know what got you there. But if you failed, you probably can figure out what caused you to fail and you can fix it. So I'd love to know, what do you consider your biggest failure in life? And what did you learn from it?
It's because I'm trying, at this time of night, I'm trying to answer truthfully, not based on thinking I know what I'm answering. I will, it just comes back down to like earlier ventures where I decided to bring on board the wrong people too early. So we lost one of our, amazing opportunities because we brought on board someone fast because we knew we need that profile. So as an entrepreneur, a lot of investors will go, okay, so he's the money guy or the, CEO. And then you need to pair that person with the CTO, so the technical. Now you got a commercial and in technical together. And then you got like this other person who might be the medical or someone who's marketing or science, whatever those chief aspects of your company. Sometimes there's a rush to bring on board those profiles, and you might have a first meeting or first talk with them and you fall in love in that first time and you go, that's a perfect match. Now I got the dream team. I can go a step further in that video game of entrepreneurship. But humans are much more layered than that. If you haven't known that person for years, if you look at that situation and you jump on board way too fast, that's what happened with me. One of my earlier ventures, I brought on board someone who was a very bad match in terms of personalities. Not to denigrate them, it was just not the right match, and that destroys the whole thing. At early stage ventures, if you have the wrong team or the wrong co-founder and you think you can just get past it because they're the right profiles, no, personality trumps profile. Personality is everything, especially at an early stage company where there's only you and that person. So always vet who you're working with at a very deep level. Never rush and jump into that first step because this means everything.
I want to add to that if I can. They have to be as committed as you, because honestly, I did that. I knew somebody for 10 years. I had a good friend. He was at the number one table at my wedding with my parents. And I had worked with the guy. I'd done all kinds of things. We played Warcraft together for a decade. And I went into business with him and I paid him a lot of money to do the work. And he disappeared with all the money. So
Wow.
They have to be committed with you. And that was the issue.
So
Right from the beginning, I knew he wasn't quite committed, but I knew he could do the work, and it didn't work out.
That's such a good compliment to what I'm saying. Absolutely.
Now, kind of on a related note, Amir, what is something that you're working to improve on in yourself today?
Um, you know, being able to, in a company where it's deep tech and you're focused on things that are kind of like nuanced and you want to adapt step by step, constantly, kind of spontaneously. There's a lot of aspects when it comes to financial forecasts and a lot of this minutia that I always try to procrastinate on. And I'm honestly at this stage in my career really trying to be serious about those elements, really figuring out how to work on those things, how to really hold myself accountable to KPIs and hold myself accountable to my own aims on those KPIs. So setting goals and setting them a month at a time and really being serious. And so I'm meeting with my team and really following through with, did we meet them? Why did we meet them or why didn't we meet them? Usually it's the second. And then you try to strategize to how can we meet them. That's always been something that I have shied away from in really being honest to myself and focusing on KPIs. But ultimately, I found them to be one of the most important elements of running a practical business, serious business. And so I'm doing online courses. Sometimes I read a lot about it daily on things. And of course I make sure that I have a calendar reminder that I'm always updating them and keeping track of those things.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Amir, this has been a fantastic interview. How do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Where are you all at in social media?
Yeah, so virtuleap.com, is our website. We're on all the social media pages with, at Virtuleap or /Virtuleap on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter and LinkedIn are actually my most active. I'm still a very big, hardcore LinkedIn user. I just can't get off that place. So our updates first and foremost come on LinkedIn. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I will most likely add you if you just mention that you're coming from this podcast, for example. And I'll be happy to answer any questions directly. I'm very personable on these channels and so on. And I'd love to find people who are inspired by this kind of intersection of technology and the sciences. So.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
I think video games, especially in the last couple of decades, have been a very controversial thing when it comes to, attention spans and the educational side of it, or the detriment to ADHD and things like that. And I think from my point of view, what we're seeing more and more in terms of my conversation with neurologists and so on is the positive side. So, I'm definitely seeing, especially in times of coronavirus, playing games, very hardcore games, very cool games, very cooperative, competitive, whatever, all of them. I think there's going to be more and more evidence of the therapeutic side of them. And so I'm saying during this second wave that's hitting the whole world, at least be rest assured that there's a healthy aspect to you playing extra video games and stuff. That's one thing I'm definitely seeing. And I'm hopefully going to be proving it too with our own research.
Wonderful. All right, Amir, thank you so much for coming on today. I genuinely do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.